Skip this video and you'll miss the most powerful quantum key of your life. Not because a video can hand you a literal key, not because these words contain some hidden code that unlocks your fate, but because there is a particular kind of realization that, once seen clearly, cannot be unseen. And something in you already sensed this before you clicked on this title. And maybe that is exactly why you are here now, at this hour, staying instead of scrolling past. It is no coincidence that you are here. Let that sentence settle without needing proof, not as flattery, not as fate handed to you on a plate, just as a possibility worth sitting with for the next few minutes. Before this video ends, you will understand three things. Soon you will see why the door you have been waiting for someone else to open has actually been unlocked this entire time. Later you will understand why the hand holding it shut was never anyone else's, and why that realization, uncomfortable as it first sounds, is actually the most freeing thing you will hear this year. And before we close, I will guide you through a short practice that many people describe as the first time they felt their own grip loosen on a door they did not even realize they were holding closed. So before we go further, take this as your first key. If any part of this message is already landing somewhere true in you, subscribe to this channel now. Not as a reflex, but as a small, quiet commitment to keep noticing where you are holding doors shut without realizing it. When you subscribe, you are telling your own mind, I am willing to keep looking at my own hand on the handle. I am willing to keep asking what I have been protecting myself from by staying exactly where I am. Because there are two kinds of people who arrive at a message like this one. There are those who hear that the door was never locked and feel a flash of defensiveness, certain that outside circumstances alone explain why they remain exactly where they are. And there are those who stay long enough to let the discomfort of that idea settle into something far more useful, the recognition that if you are the one holding the door, you are also the one capable of releasing it. You already know which one you are tonight. For most of your life, you were taught to look outside yourself for the reason things have not changed yet. Not enough money, not enough time, not enough support, not enough courage from other people to go first. And certainly, real constraints exist, real circumstances that genuinely limit what is possible in a given season of life. This is not a message asking you to pretend those constraints do not exist, but underneath many of the doors people spend years insisting are locked from the outside, there is often a quieter, less examined truth. A hand of their own quietly pressed against the other side, holding it shut out of fear disguised as caution, out of old wounds disguised as realism, out of a familiar identity disguised as simply who I am. This is the first revelation. Some doors really are locked by circumstance, but many more are held shut by a grip so familiar it no longer feels like a choice at all. Here is a simple way to test this in your own life. Think of something you have said you want for a long time, a change, a conversation, a new direction, something you have described as blocked, delayed, or waiting on the right conditions. Now ask yourself honestly, is this actually locked from the outside? Or is there a version of this I could begin today, imperfectly, uncomfortably, without waiting for permission or perfect circumstance? For many people, the honest answer is uncomfortable. The door was not actually sealed. It simply required walking through it while still afraid, still unready, still without every guarantee lined up in advance, and that requirement, more than any external lock, is what kept the door closed for so long. Many people spend years waiting for the fear to disappear before they will finally act, believing that courage is a feeling that must arrive first, like weather clearing before a journey can begin. But courage rarely works that way. Courage is far more often the act of walking through the door while the fear is still present, not after it has considerately left the room. Waiting for fear to fully disappear before acting is, in practice, another way of holding the door shut indefinitely. Dressed up as patience, dressed up as waiting for the right moment, when the moment being waited for was never actually going to arrive on its own. There are those who will spend a lifetime waiting for fear to leave before they finally move, growing more comfortable with the waiting than with the idea of ever actually walking through. And there are those who will pause here, in this very video, and ask a quieter, more honest question. What if I stopped waiting for permission, certainty, or the disappearance of fear, and instead simply loosened my own grip on the door I have been holding shut this entire time? Not a promise, not a guarantee everything on the other side will be easy, but an invitation, available starting now. Miłos. Now listen carefully, because this is where the title becomes more than a title. The most powerful quantum key of your life is not a secret formula hidden somewhere outside you, waiting to be discovered through enough searching. It is a private, repeatable recognition available the moment you notice your own hand on the handle and choose, deliberately, to loosen your grip rather than wait for the door to somehow open itself. The door was never locked. You were the one holding it shut. Let that sentence rest here for a moment, the way a single note rests before the next one arrives. Not as blame, not as an accusation that your struggle was somehow your fault for existing, but as an honest, freeing recognition. Blame looks backward, searching for who is responsible for the closed door. This recognition looks forward, asking a far more useful question. Given that my own hand has been on this handle, what happens the moment I choose to loosen it? Here is the quiet loop most people live inside without ever naming it. An old fear, often formed long before adulthood, creates a belief that a particular kind of change is dangerous, humiliating, or simply not meant for someone like them. That belief generates a hand quietly pressed against the door, holding it shut in the name of safety. The door staying shut becomes, over time, proof that it was locked all along, evidence used to justify the very grip that created the appearance of a lock in the first place. And the person concludes, understandably but incorrectly, that circumstance alone is responsible, when circumstance was only ever half of the actual story. There are those who will hear this and feel a flicker of defensiveness, as if being told they were holding the door is being told their fear was never valid, or that real barriers never existed for them. Real barriers absolutely exist for many people, shaped by circumstance, by resources, by genuine limitation that this message has no intention of dismissing. This is not a message insisting every closed door in every life is purely self-imposed. This is a message asking a more precise, more useful question about the specific doors you have personally been standing in front of. For this particular door, in your particular life, right now, is your hand still on the handle? And if it is, what would it feel like to notice that honestly, without either denying it or drowning in shame about it? Take a slow breath right now, without needing to close your eyes if you are not ready. Notice the quality of the air entering your body. Notice whether your hands feel open or quietly clenched, the way a hand instinctively tightens around something it is afraid to release. You do not need to change anything yet. Just notice where your own grip currently sits. This is the beginning of the shift this video describes, not a dramatic door bursting open all at once, but a quiet return, again and again, to the simple, honest question of whether your own hand is still pressed against the handle. If this message is beginning to touch something real in you, comment this phrase now. I am ready to loosen my grip on the door. Writing it will not instantly force you through every closed door in your life, but it becomes a small marker your own mind can return to later, a quiet anchor point in an ordinary day. A reminder that you once, consciously, chose honesty over the comfort of blaming circumstance alone. And when someone else reads those words beneath this video, they may feel, for a moment, a little less alone in their own loosening.
Now let the next layer open.
There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes specifically from holding a door shut for so long that the holding itself becomes invisible, absorbed so completely into daily life that it no longer registers as effort at all. The tension in the jaw that has been there so long it feels like simply how your face is shaped. The habit of saying not yet that has repeated so many times it has quietly become never, without you ever consciously deciding that. This is the second revelation. The grip does not always feel like gripping. Sometimes it feels exactly like normal life, which is precisely why it can go unnoticed for years, decades, sometimes entire lifetimes. Notice how differently a door behaves once the grip holding it is actually named rather than simply lived inside unconsciously. An unnamed grip feels like fixed reality, an immovable fact about how things simply are. A named grip, even one still present, even one not yet released, behaves differently the moment it is seen clearly. Because seeing a grip is the first step toward the possibility of loosening it. You cannot release a hand you do not know is closed. But a hand, once noticed, has already begun the process of opening, whether or not it fully lets go in this exact moment. If this is resonating with you, subscribe now, not as a casual gesture, but as a small, energetic commitment to keep noticing your own grip instead of letting today's clarity dissolve quietly back into tomorrow's unexamined normal. Let it mean I am choosing, on purpose, to keep looking honestly at my own hand. Consider how often the closed door being protected is not actually danger, but simply the unfamiliar. The nervous system does not distinguish especially well between genuinely threatening and simply new. A door leading toward genuine growth, a harder conversation, a career change, an honest boundary, a creative risk, can trigger nearly identical protective signals to a door leading toward actual danger, because the nervous system's job is pattern recognition, not accurate risk assessment of entirely unprecedented situations. This is worth naming clearly, because much of what feels like wise caution is, on closer, honest inspection, simply unfamiliarity wearing the costume of danger, convincing enough to keep the door shut for years past the point where actual risk justified it. There is a particular myth worth naming directly, because without naming it, this teaching can be quietly misunderstood. This is not a message promising that every door, once opened, leads somewhere comfortable or easy. Some doors, once walked through, lead to real difficulty, real consequence, real hard seasons that must be lived through rather than skipped past. The key being described here is not a guarantee of ease on the other side. It is simply the recognition that the choice to walk through, difficult as the path beyond it may be, was always more available than the locked door story allowed you to believe. Freedom is not the same as comfort. Sometimes freedom is simply the honest acknowledgement that a harder, more honest path was actually available the entire time, even if walking it will cost something real. It is worth naming, too, the difference between genuinely loosening a grip and simply performing openness while quietly keeping every door exactly as closed as before. Performed openness talks about change constantly, journals about it, posts about it, discusses it at length with anyone willing to listen, and yet somehow the actual door never actually gets approached. This is not dishonesty in the dramatic sense. It is simply another, quieter way of keeping the hand on the handle, disguised this time as reflection rather than avoidance. Real loosening looks different. It is often quieter, less discussed, and far more likely to involve one small, concrete, uncomfortable action than an elaborate new understanding of the pattern. Insight without a single step through the door eventually becomes just another form of the grip, however articulate it sounds. Consider, too, how differently the exact same door looks depending on which self is standing in front of it. A self still identified entirely with the fear sees the door as evidence of danger, proof that staying exactly where things are is the wise, protective choice. A self who has begun loosening the grip can look at the identical door and see something else entirely, an uncomfortable but survivable unknown, not a guarantee of disaster, simply an honest unknown that has been mistaken for certain danger for far longer than the evidence actually supported. The door did not change, the one standing in front of it did. Embrace. Here is something worth sitting with honestly. Many people secretly resist this recognition, even while consciously wanting change, because a familiar closed door, however frustrating, still feels safer than the disorientation of an open one with no guaranteed outcome on the other side. If you have spent years explaining your life through a locked door that circumstance alone controls, a version of you who admits some grip has been your own can feel strangely destabilizing, even threatening, even though it is ultimately far more empowering. This is not weakness. It is simply a nervous system trusting a familiar explanation over an unfamiliar responsibility. If this describes something in you, you are not failing at this shift. You are standing right at its edge, which is exactly where this practice is designed to meet you. Now we move toward the practice hidden inside this message. Let your body settle wherever you are sitting or lying right now. You do not need silence around you, only a small amount of willingness inside you. Soften your gaze, or let your eyes close if that feels right. Let your next breath arrive a little slower than the one before it, not forced, simply unhurried. Feel the weight of your body being held by whatever is beneath it, the chair, the floor, the surface that has been holding you this entire time, without asking anything in return. You are not trying to force a door open by sheer will. You are simply noticing, honestly, where your own hand currently rests. As you breathe, bring to mind, gently, one door in your life you have described as closed, blocked, or waiting on better circumstances. Do not judge yourself for whatever you notice. Simply notice, with as much honesty as you can access right now, whether any part of that closed door has, in fact, been held shut by your own grip, your own fear, your own familiar story about who you are and what you are allowed to attempt. Inhale and silently ask, "Is my hand on this handle?" Exhale and silently allow whatever honest answer arises without needing to act on it immediately, without needing to fix anything in this exact moment. Inhale, notice the grip. Exhale, allow the noticing. Let this happen 2 or 3 more times at your own unhurried pace. There is no wrong way to practice this. There is only the noticing and the gentle return to it whenever old denial reappears, which it will, and which is simply part of the practice rather than a failure of it. As you continue breathing at this slower pace, silently repeat the sentence forming underneath this entire message. The door was never locked. You were the one holding it shut. Let the words move with your breath rather than your urgency. The door was never locked. On the inhale, you were the one holding it shut. On the exhale. Feel how different this sentence lands when it is received not as an accusation, but as the quiet, freeing recognition that your own hand has always had more power in this than the locked door story ever allowed you to believe. Notice, without needing to change anything further, whether something in your hands or shoulders feels even slightly different than it did when this video began. Perhaps a small softening, perhaps very little has shifted, and that is completely fine too. This practice is not measured by a single dramatic breakthrough or a door bursting open by the end of this video. It is measured the way any real capacity is built, through quiet, unglamorous repetition, returning again and again to honest noticing rather than comfortable denial. Let this small practice become something you can return to without needing a video to guide you through it again. One noticed door, one breath, one quiet sentence, timed to the rhythm of your own chest. The door was never locked. You were the one holding it shut. This costs nothing, requires no special setting, and can be practiced the moment you catch yourself explaining, once again, why something still has not changed. The people who genuinely walk through real doors over time are rarely the ones who waited for perfect courage to arrive first. They are the ones who returned to a small practice like this one, quietly, imperfectly, hundreds of times, until noticing their own grip stopped feeling like failure and started feeling like the actual key. Now, gently bring your attention back to the room around you, to the sound of your own presence here, to the simple fact that you stayed through this entire message when a dozen easier distractions were only a swipe away. That choice to stay is itself a small act of the very honesty this video has been describing. Let us gather what this message has offered you. The recognition that some doors are genuinely locked by real circumstance, while many others are held shut by a grip so familiar it no longer registers as effort. The understanding that courage rarely arrives before action, but is far more often built by walking through a door while fear is still fully present. The distinction between genuine loosening and performed openness that talks about change endlessly, while never actually approaching the door, one an honest release, the other a quieter form of the same grip. The honesty that freedom is not the same as guaranteed comfort on the other side. Only the recognition that a harder, more honest path was actually available the entire time. And the practice, simple enough to repeat daily, of one breath, one honest question about your own grip, one quiet sentence that can guide you back whenever comfortable denial returns. The door was never locked. You were the one holding it shut. If this message reached you at the right moment, like this video now, not for an algorithm, but as a way of sealing this recognition in your own field of attention. Subscribe if you have not yet, because the next transmission will go deeper into what happens once a door is actually walked through, how identity reorganizes itself on the other side of a long-held grip finally released, and why the version of you on the other side rarely resembles the catastrophe your fear had been quietly predicting. Share this with someone who has been explaining a closed door through circumstance alone for far too long. Someone who needs to hear that their own hand may have more power in this than they have been allowing themselves to believe. You are not trapped. You are not simply waiting on permission that will never arrive. You are not powerless in front of every door you have called locked. The door was never locked. You were the one holding it shut, and perhaps the most powerful quantum key of your life is not a secret hidden somewhere outside you, not a stroke of rare fortune reserved for someone else, but the quiet, repeatable moment happening in you right now. The moment you notice your own hand on the handle and remember that loosening it was always, ultimately yours to choose.